No clarity after all of the Western Conference games in their playoff picture. In fact, less clarity. It's much more convoluted. And will LeBron James make an All-NBA team? What about Mr. Triple-Double Domantas Sabonis? Let's talk about it all right now on the Locked On NBA podcast.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On NBA podcast, where it's a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Oh, I got this covered, man. This is the smoothest.
You are excited to come to New Orleans today, tomorrow, depending on when people are listening to this.
I am like the Celtics in Atlanta. I am looking past what I'm doing at the moment and moving on to my next one. Thank you for subscribing and all that stuff here. Watch the show on YouTube. On Wednesdays, it's me. I'm John Karalis, host of the Locked On Celtics podcast. You can find me on Twitter at John_Karalis.
And I'm Jake Madison, host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast, on Twitter at NolaJake.
I am calm. I am composed. Later on, we're going to talk about the All-NBA teams. Domantas Sabonis played in this one, but LeBron James did not play on Tuesday night. Will either of those guys make an All-NBA team? We'll talk about that. We'll get into the play-in stuff. This is all about, Jake, the Western Conference playoff picture. The East, we kind of know what that's going to be. Boston has the East wrapped up. Milwaukee, Cleveland, New York, they'll hash it out. There's a little bit of maneuvering there in the East, but the West, oh man, slots 5 through 8. Who knows what's going to happen? It involves your New Orleans Pelicans, who played and lost to the OKC Thunder. It involves the Dallas Mavericks and Sacramento Kings, who played each other. Dallas won. It involves the Phoenix Suns, who play, I think, tomorrow. The Lakers, who won without LeBron. Big comeback over the Milwaukee Bucks. All right, where do we even start with this? Because it's so. Want to start with the late game. Let's start with Dallas and Sacramento here, because this is the line between just straight on playoff team and got to get into the play-in tournament. You have to face one of these dangerous teams: Phoenix, LA, Golden State, potentially the Pelicans if they fall in there. Western Conference play-in tournament has to be like the worst punishment for one of these, the 4, 5, 6 teams that could, or mostly 5, 6 teams that could slip into that.
Yeah, right. Like, I think we feel confident with the top of the West, like the top of the West, and the Denver Nuggets, the Thunder, and the Timberwolves. You know, maybe was worried at one point about the Timberwolves, but they've gone 7-3 in their last 10 after losing Karl Anthony Towns. Like, that's set. And then everything's kind of wide open. There's the Clippers, who are the most uninspiring 4th seed ever. And then from there, it's just, I don't know if it's like a rock fight, maybe it's a pillow fight, because we're talking the play-in tournament here, whatever it is, but like, it's brutal. And the positioning is going to be really important, I think, because look, there's a significant difference between being the 8 or 9 seed in this, right? If you're the 8 seed, you've got to win 1 game out of 2 and you're in. For the 9th seed, you've got to win 2 straight games, and that is significantly harder in a one-off win-or-go-home environment, right? Where like just weirdness can happen. You know, a couple of years ago, to put how like sometimes there's just a knife's edge on this, when the Pelicans got in through the play-in tournament, that first game they beat the Spurs. The second game they were on the road to the Clippers. Paul George was ruled out with like COVID-like symptoms or the flu or something like that, right? And then the Clippers lost. And look, honestly, if he plays, they probably beat New Orleans, and that's that. These one-off situations like this, like, you can't risk it, right? Like, you just can't risk that sort of thing, because it's who knows what fluky thing might happen. That's why the stakes are so high for all of this, right? So how's this? Let's start with the Golden State Warriors. We kind of agree that they're going to finish 10th, right? Like them, or maybe the Houston Rockets, who are nipping at their heels.
I don't know if they're going to finish 10th. I mean, do you
think they're going to finish higher? How's that?
No.
Okay.
I think they run the risk of not finishing 10th at all.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
That I think is the bigger thing with them. Okay, so they beat the Miami Heat on Tuesday night. That's nice. Klay Thompson gets the start. He goes off, but they started Klay out of like some desperation because the offense wasn't going well. And they're all right, well, let's go to Klay Thompson, who's had a weird
that's
season.
not the answer anymore. Yeah.
You know, right? It's weird that you're like, oh, let's try Klay and hope he gets hot. Okay, so he got hot. But so is that sustainable? What happens if he reverts back to the struggles from earlier this season? Meanwhile, the Rockets are on their big 9-game winning streak and making this push. It's difficult to continue that. I don't trust the Rockets, obviously, but I think the Warriors are 10th at best. But sliding out would be is not out of the question, which is something that I think the 7-8, whoever finishes 7-8 is rooting hard for the Rockets, rooting their butts off for the Rockets.
I don't know, like maybe, but that's a team with a lot of momentum. They've won 9 straight. Now they're going to get Oklahoma City Thunder on Wednesday, who's coming off a tough game with New Orleans. So it's the second out of a back-to-back. Like maybe, but that's also a well-coached team in Houston with Udoka, who you're familiar with. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think either of those two teams is going to win a game in the play-in tournament, but that is definitely like a battle to watch. But I think to me, it's just only those two teams, right? It's going to be the Warriors or it's going to be Houston. But you're right. It really easily could be Houston going in with that kind of momentum here. And Golden State's just been a weird team. Look, the past 2 years, right, with everything. So I don't know. Like, I really don't know how that one's going to play out either. Like, none of this is certain. This might go down to the final game of the regular season, which, like, good for the NBA, the play-in tournament creating drama here.
Yeah, I guess that's what they want, right? I think the Lakers with their win kind of had solidified themselves. I don't think they're going to fall to 10 at this point. No, I don't either. Now the question is, can they jump into that 7-8? They're 2 games behind Sacramento and Phoenix, who are tied at 42 and 30. Again, with 10 games to go, 2 games is hard to make up, because it's just whatever deficit you have, it's difficult. The Lakers are starting a big road trip. This is not going to be easy for the Lakers. This was a huge, huge win for them, because now they at least have a shot at sneaking into 8th. And if you can sneak into 8th, like you said, you get that 1 win, and then who knows from there? Maybe if you can get that first win and you get the Oklahoma City Thunder, you've actually played well against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And there's a weird kind of, the Lakers have a path to a first round upset win here. And it's all because they were able to come back from 19 down against the Bucks and snag this win in double overtime. So that was a very big win for the Lakers, and it gives them this slight glimmer of hope.
Yeah, I agree. Look, the difference between the 9th seed and the 8th seed, as I said earlier, is huge for the Los Angeles Lakers here, who I don't think want to have to try and win 2. You know, maybe the first one at home, but then certainly going on the road to playing either at that point, based on the standings right now, Sacramento or the Phoenix Suns, right? Like the Suns, which we imagine are better kind of than their record, even though they just lost to the Wemby-less San Antonio Spurs. Like, that's just not an environment in a do or die situation that I think they're feeling comfortable with. So they're certainly going to be pushing to go to get out of that 9th spot and try and get 7 or 8. I think it's doable for them. I don't see them getting to 6, but 7 or 8 seems certainly doable.
Have you seen what Phoenix's schedule is moving forward? Denver, at OKC, at New Orleans, Cleveland, Minnesota, New Orleans again, back-to-back home road versus the Clippers, Sacramento, Minnesota, all good teams the rest of the way for Phoenix. There is a strong chance that they are going to struggle the rest of the way here. That gives the Lakers an opening. Again, the Lakers also have a road trip here coming up that they just started here at Milwaukee, but it's Memphis, Brooklyn's in there, Toronto, Washington. It's a road trip, but it's winnable games. And they have Golden State at the end of their schedule. They got Memphis at the end of their schedule. New Orleans. Your team could be the team that
final game of the regular season.
You know, that could be a huge game determining where they fall. But all I'm saying is, considering the Suns schedule, considering the Lakers schedule, and I don't want to be the podcast that's like, you know, oh, we've got to talk about the Lakers, but here they are with a path, and it started with this win. That I can't overstate the importance of this win. They have a path to the 8th seed, and that means they have a path to claiming the 7th seed, and depending on the matchup, they wouldn't be favored, but they'd be scary. So there's that. Let's continue this because the Western Conference playoff picture still a huge mess. We'll talk about that, continue that conversation in just a second. Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up like Jake levels up his array of cars to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On Sports today. Turn off Fox News. Turn off ESPN, all that yelling and shouting and fake conversation. We're doing the real conversation like this podcast. They're all our national podcasts streaming 24/7 on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today, or the Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, so the Lakers, the Kings and Mavs had their battle here. They play again. So I don't even know if anything's been answered. So the Mavs ran away with this one. It was a little bit embarrassing for the Kings because this was deemed a big game, and you end up losing by 30. What was 36 is the end of the final tally here. All right. The Kings have another opportunity to right this and get their revenge in the very next game here. So this I'm not too worried about this loss. They get a couple days off. They can go look at the film. They can make their adjustments. The Kings with Sabonis, I think can come back. It's tough to beat the same team twice in a row. So I don't know, Jake. Are you making anything of this? This loss to the Mavs is the thoroughness of this win from top to bottom. Does that kind of sway you at all?
So it actually does, and I think you've got to kind of look at the recent run of form for both of these teams, where Dallas is kind of like, they've done this all season. They've been streaky, right? Like they'll win a bunch of games in a row, then they kind of have a rocky period, then they win a bunch of games in a row. They're kind of in that stretch of where they're like, oh, they look really good right now.
5 in a row, 9 of their last 10.
Like, they look good right now, and the Kings have been kind of rocky. They've shown some flashes, but then there's a lot of moments of like, oh yeah, they're still the Kings, who kind of shed that label a little bit last year, but didn't quite fully shed that label, the Kangs, and they still show a little bit of that. And you kind of saw that in this game. So it's me trusting the Dallas Mavericks more. But also, you mentioned Phoenix's strength of schedule coming up. Sacramento's isn't easy, right? They've got the Boston Celtics, the Thunder, the Pelicans in there, who have beaten them 4 times this season. This will be the 5th matchup between them, and the Pelicans could go 5-0 because of the in-season tournament stuff, right? They still have to play the Knicks. They have that game against Dallas. The Clippers are thrown in there too. They have a couple of very winnable games, certainly, but it's not like their schedule is a cakewalk either here. So I think if you're looking at this, based off of the recent run of form, which could switch at any second for the Dallas Mavericks, I'm probably putting Dallas above Sacramento right now. But I think then Sacramento looks at Phoenix and is like, okay, at least we'll finish better than them.
Yeah, that's going to be the key. There is just staying above that Phoenix line. I think the Kings have this real chance to make a run here, even with their strength of schedule, because the Mavs are. I just feel like they're due for a little bit of a regression. And maybe that's not going to happen because it's the final kick. And this is where, if there's one thing I know about Kyrie from his time on the Celtics, is that when playoff time comes around, he is generally like a little bit more energized. And, he has had a real great stretch recently. If he hadn't missed as many games as he had, he'd be probably in line for some of these postseason awards. And he's playing well. Luka's playing great. Obviously, he's an MVP candidate. I can't trust the Mavs. I just can't trust them enough for me to say that they aren't going to have a little bit of a slip and fall into that 7th seed. I don't know what to make of the 6-7. I don't know what to make of the Mavs. I don't know what to make of the Kings. You can tell me any number of things here, and let's lump your Pelicans into this here, because they're right there. It's 2 games that separates those 3 teams. The Pels have had ups and downs as well. And I guess that's the whole point of this playoff conversation, is that there's a bunch of teams that are somewhat untrustworthy. It just kind of depends on things kind of breaking their way.
Yeah. One last thing on the Sacramento Kings. When I look at them this year compared to last year, their offense just hasn't been as good. They shot pretty lights out last season. That's why they had one of the best offenses in the league, and they haven't had that this year. And now they're without Kevin Huerter too, who's probably going to miss the rest of the regular season. That's a pretty significant injury to me, because they need that shooting and they don't get that exactly where they need it in other areas too. So that, I think, is one of the reasons why I'm also kind of putting Dallas above them with that. On the Pelicans side of things, right? My show, Locked On Pelicans, that I just recorded before we did this, is me talking about how their loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder was literally the most frustrating loss of the season for them, where they've had a lot of them, right? This is a team that is now 0-17 when they are losing going into the 4th quarter. That is a horrific stat, and not one that inspires confidence. They're without Brandon Ingram, who's going to miss at least another week and a half with that hyperextended knee. Their schedule upcoming is brutal. They're on a 6-game homestand, 5-game homestand now after the loss to OKC. So you feel like that makes you feel good. Then you look at the teams on the 6-game homestand. It was Oklahoma City, the Bucks, the Celtics, the Phoenix Suns, then the Orlando Magic, and you finally end against the San Antonio Spurs with Wemby, who can probably give Zion some trouble. That's not great. There's been a lot of late game miscues and things like that from this team that just hasn't figured out how to win close, tough games. When you're playing good teams, you're not going to blow them out every night. This team handles terrible teams, particularly on the road, but there's concerns here right now that if you go 0-4, I'm part of this. Where do you end up, and how does that affect you when it comes to this sort of thing? None of this stuff is going to be set until the final day of the regular season, it seems. Look, I cover New Orleans, so I feel confident in them. You have some kind of gimmies against maybe the Spurs coming up, still Portland there. That's going to help, but maybe you have 2 games against the Suns. Maybe you split that. That's 3 wins you're kind of looking at over these final now 10 games. That's not a great position to be in. So all of this is going to be tough. And, what I think is kind of interesting when you look at Dallas, when you look at New Orleans, when you look at Sacramento, the teams that maybe we have a little bit more faith in than, and even Phoenix there too. And you mentioned it with the Lakers, right? You just might get a real favorable matchup in the first round and win that series. There's certain teams I think New Orleans matches up really well with. I don't think Minnesota wants any part of them whatsoever. And somehow you could get into the play-in tournament, get that matchup, and then win the series just because it's a super favorable matchup. Same for the Kings, same for Dallas with Luka, same as you mentioned for the Lakers if they get OKC. And it's kind of wild to say that.
I'm going to review my picks here for the end of the Western Conference. And upon review, my initial call of the Sacramento Kings is overturned. Pause for applause. Handle. Is this triggering anything in you? Is this review triggering anything in you?
Yeah, man. I'm going to take the mic here.
Okay. Hold on. Let's hold off for a second. Breathe. We're going to take a second. We're going to do this on the other side. Bill Kennedy had some fun at that New Orleans Pelicans games, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. Today's show is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. That's your destination for sports, live games, highlights, in-depth analysis. You got amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your regular TV that gives you access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. So whether it's the opening weekend of Major League Baseball, the tournament, you want to have your Fire TV. They've recently created Fire TV channels to deliver you a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands like the Locked On Podcast Network, all for free. That includes all of us here, most of the pro big leagues, college conferences. Fire TV channels let you dive into all game analysis, highlights, keep up to date in the latest of the sports world like March Madness, NBA, obviously, MLB, more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Today's show also brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what kind of adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. Like the 2024 Nissan Rogue, it's perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Don't worry about connecting your phone. You don't have to. Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store, it's all built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Nissan's incredible lineup also includes the 2024 Nissan Armada, which will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. Tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, Jake, I'm hitting the green light challenge. What do you got for me over there in New Orleans where Bill Kennedy had some fun in front of that Smoothie King Center crowd?
Dude, get you someone who loves you like Bill Kennedy loves talking to an arena filled with NBA fans waiting on his word because they kind of want to know whether the call on the court was correct, incorrect, whether challenge was successful, whether it was unsuccessful. It's a kind of funny thing. Like, I don't necessarily hate some of these refs kind of hamming it up and enjoying their moment a little bit for some of these replay reviews, even though they're not the ones doing the replay reviews, right? It's just going to the league in Secaucus, and then they're told what to say with this sort of thing. They're dragging it out too far. Bill Kennedy had 2 in the span of like 5 minutes, and he probably was the happiest dude you've ever seen in my life, right? Like, they wait for the boos to come down. They go, the call on the court is, and they just pause. And they're like pausing for dramatic effect. And like, it's funny once, and then it gets annoying really quickly, especially because like, what is the team you cover, going against your team? I actually think they got the calls correct. One challenge was successful for OKC, and then the Pelicans challenge, and I did not like that challenge, and they said it was unsuccessful. So I don't have a problem with the calls. In the playoffs, when we're going to be watching these games, this doesn't need to be a thing, right? Like just get the call correct, sort it out, and go on with playing basketball, which is why everybody is here. They're not here to see you, Scott Foster, Bill Kennedy, right? Like, I don't know, just dragging them out when the stakes are kind of high, and the stakes were high for this game in New Orleans, like, just gets really annoying, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It was funny. But it's funny when it's not your team. So
yeah, totally.
I did get a kick out of it.
Helps things here.
The Scott Foster one from the Celtics Lakers, I think it was Christmas Day, where LeBron, the foul was called on LeBron. He blocked Jason Tatum, but I think Taurean Prince had fouled him before. So he didn't say unsuccessful challenge. He said LeBron James' block on Jason Tatum was good. And everybody goes, ah! And it's like, oh, you're not going to like this.
Which is funny.
Which is hilarious when you're not a Lakers fan. And he's like, but Prince fouled or whoever was, they fouled like, and yeah, so he got the whole, he hammed it up. So it's just funny. When you mentioned Bill Kennedy, I said, oh, I've been talking about this for years. And I sent you tweets that I'd sent out like 2 years ago. Yeah. From Bill Kennedy, same thing. So anyway.
So here's what they need. And we were texting about this, right? We need to make the All-Star game fun and entertaining again.
Yes.
Instead of the dunk contest, what if we just bring some of the best refs and their replay reviews, and we just let them do this in a contest and let the players give them grades, right?
Yeah.
Like think about it. The league,
like pose off.
Something, however they call it, like how long can you hold that pause before you make the call? How long do you let the booze rain down for, and those sorts of things, right? You know, FanDuel, you'd get odds on this on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It would be a lot of fun. The refs, I'm sure, would love that sort of thing. Look, if they enjoy doing this, let's put them on the spot here.
All right, let's get into the real part of this segment. It's our regular game, weekly, real or fake.
Is this real or fake? Just ask John and Jake.
Real or fake, Jake Madison? LeBron James is going to make an all-NBA team.
So it's real because he's LeBron James, not because he's necessarily deserving of it. I talked about this a little bit on Locked On Pelicans when I was looking at the All-NBA teams and if Zion Williamson can make it. I think the first team is set. I think it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, Giannis, and Nikola Jokic. Like, that's what I think it is. And it's positionless this year, but I think for the most part, because that first team kind of slots well in terms of positions, voters are going to stick with that for the most part, not entirely. My second All-NBA team is Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brunson, Kawhi Leonard, Sabonis, who we'll talk about in a second here, and Anthony Davis, which means on the third team, are they really going to leave off Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and LeBron James? How big of... There's such big names. I'm not sure. Which then means if they're on there, you've got to pick from like Zion, Booker, Fox, Wemby, Jaylen Brown, Halliburton. All NBA third team voting is going to be wild to me.
It's all NBA voting. I think past first team is going to be wild.
That's fair.
Here's the question. Are you really going to put two guys on the All-NBA team from a play-in team? Are you really going to have the Lakers as the potential 8th or 9th seed or whatever they end up being, or 10th? Are you going to put two Lakers on? And that's going to be the question when everybody puts everything together. Anthony Davis is making it. So, right? Like,
he's been really good this year.
Meanwhile, the Celtics are going to end up winning 3 games. And there's a question about Jaylen Brown making an All-NBA team. So I just don't think when the voters look at their final votes, I know it's LeBron, but if you're looking at the best teams, Denver is only going to get one guy.
Jamal Murray's not eligible, to be fair on that.
No, right. That's what I'm saying. They're only going to get one guy. Are the Celtics only going to get one guy? Is the Thunder only going to get one guy? The Minnesota Timberwolves only going to get one guy, but the Lakers are going to get two? Like that.
Yeah, when your name is LeBron James, they will. It's why I don't think you'll see Fox on there, but I would put Sabonis on there, right? When I was filling out my teams, that was my logic. And there's some room to change over these final 10 games or so, right? Literally, my logic was like, I can't put two players from the Kings on here when they're not solidly in the playoffs, and I think Sabonis has been better than Fox, so I'm leaving him off. And yet I can't apply that. It's hypocritical in a sense, right? I can't apply that to the Lakers, who, as you said, AD is going to make it, but I'm going to put LeBron on because I think he's going to get on because he's LeBron James.
Yeah,
it's just name thing.
Luka, Jokic, Tatum, SGA, and Giannis, I think, is the consensus first team.
Yeah.
My second team right now, I'm looking at Jaylen Brown, Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brunson, Kawhi Leonard, and Anthony Davis. Jaylen Brown, and now I'm obviously the Celtics guy, so I'm watching him every day, and he's playing
totally
great. I mean, he's playing the best basketball of his life. He was the second-team All-NBA guy last season, and he's playing better this season. Both ends of the floor, he has stepped up. So I think he's a definite All-NBA guy. And regardless of, the fact that the Celtics are going to be a 60-win team and they should have two All-NBA guys when there is a tiebreaker to be had. Durant, Steph, Sabonis, those three are solidly on my third team. But now that leaves two spots. I just can't bring myself to put LeBron James on there when there are so many. And I don't know who it's going to be in those last two spots, but if the Pelicans hold on and are one of the 4 or 5, then I think Zion has to get consideration, right? Because he is a huge part of why they are where they are. Like the switch to a more consistent point Zion has been the story of the Pelicans' resurgence. So that to me, and the numbers are there, that tells me he has to be considered strongly if they are a 4 or 5 and the Lakers are sitting down there at 8 or 9. That's just, I can't. So that leaves one spot, and now it's up for significant debate. There are a lot of guys out there, Halliburton, Banchero.
I didn't even mention him. He should be in consideration for it too. Like
there's tons of guys that. So you're right. It's going to be interesting to have that conversation at the end of the year because it's going to be. It might be the widest swath of players ever voted for an All-NBA. So.
I think that's what you're going to see. Like, I think you're going to see so many different guys get votes. Also, because some of these guys are ineligible, right? Like Kyrie Irving is ineligible. Donovan Mitchell is ineligible. Jamal Murray is ineligible. No Jimmy Butler, no Joel Embiid. There's probably a couple others that I'm not thinking of. There's a couple guys that it's still to be TBD if they're going to, make that or anything like that. It's going to be super interesting. I think that first team is set. I think those are the consensus 5 guys. You may see I think you'll see 4 of them almost be unanimous, and Tatum might be a near unanimous is probably what I would guess with that. Then the second, third team, you're going to be like 80 dudes got votes for all NBA, right? Like it's going to be something like that because you can kind of do whatever you want, and you can have some weird teams there because of it being positionless voting and a number of big names not being able to be included in this sort of thing. And it might mean then that a LeBron James gets left off, that Kevin Durant gets left off, or Steph Curry gets left off, which kind of seems unfathomable, but very much might be the actual case in the reality of the situation.
Might be, but you know what? Bottom line is you got to put Sabonis on one of these teams.
Yeah, he's been so good this year.
We got to wrap this up, but that has to be like the headline. Well, I know we framed it around LeBron, but really the conversation starts around Sabonis, who's got 25 triple doubles, 57 double. Like it's ridiculous what he's been doing. The original pitch for this segment was if he was on the Knicks, would he be an MVP frontrunner? Which I think if he was on the Knicks doing all of this, yes, he would be. So he has to make an All-NBA team. I hope he makes an All-NBA team. Let's have some justice out here. All right. We got to wrap things up. On Wednesdays here on the Locked On NBA podcast, it's me, John Karalis, host of the Locked On Celtics podcast. I'm on Twitter at John_Karalis.
And I'm Jake Madison, host of Locked On Pelicans, on Twitter at NolaJake.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Watch the show on YouTube. Hop into the comments section and share the podcast. Spread the word. Tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On NBA podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.